Thank you. Well, I think we will. There are still folks coming in as we speak, but I think we'll get started. And I really want to welcome you all, and particularly welcome dear Katherine Collins. In fact, Katherine, I'm going to ask you to unmute and say something so you're on everybody's first screen.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you.
Great. And if you're not Katherine Collins or Toby, please put yourself on mute if you're not already. And also want to introduce you to Jennifer Gardner, who some of you know from previous Zoom things. She's our tech person and our support, and she's wonderful. And if you have any technical problems, you can private chat Jennifer. We had more than 80 people register for this because this time needs this conversation. And typically people register, some of them can't show up at this time so they get the recording, but we have a community now of 30 and growing. Thank you for clearing this part of your day to be here with us. My name is Toby Hertzlich. I'm the founder of Biomimicry for Social Innovation. And we are a platform to translate nature's intelligence into evolutionary practices for our time, or the people side of it. And we also connect other people who are thinking about that and doing that too. So that's what today is about. And Katherine, I'm so excited to have you with us. You are a Renaissance woman in my heart. You are the author of Month of Sundays, which is what we will be talking about today. You see, I have it tagged. Also the author of The Nature of Investing, the left brain and right brain aspects of yourself. You're the founder of Honeybee Capital. You are the head of sustainable investing at Putnam Investments in Boston, a beekeeper, an activist. There's many different sides to you. So Katherine is also the first person that I knew who wrote and published a book about biomimicry that had to do with more of the social side of things, the human dynamics side of things, the culture change side of things. So I'm just so honored to have you with us today. And thank you for being here. And thank you also for clearing your time to be available for folks. Our purpose today is to introduce Katherine's new book to the world. Many of you already know this, but if you don't, you should. And I see people raising their books. That's so great. And to, also just to share some delight together in a season that's been challenging and tough. As the days get darker, it feels like it's a good time to bring some light in, and this book is a very good way to do that. This is the second episode of Biomimicry for Social Innovation's Voices of Nature author series. And this is about crowd supporting new voices, women in particular, that are bringing forward the voices of nature, the voices of life in new ways at this time when it's really needed. I have been learning how much it takes to promote a book, and authors are doing their own self-promotion these days. So this is a way that we as a community can support Katherine in getting this book out to the world, and also learn a little bit about it so that you can get this book onto your holiday shopping list for all the people that you love, that you want to make this wisdom available to yourself. We are partnering with Women Leading Change, formerly known as Cultivating Women's Leadership, and many of you I see are from that network too. So, and this is supported in part with a grant from the Nobel Foundation. So that's all of my kind of, why are we here? Katherine, anything you want to say about our purpose, your purpose? What made you say that?
So complete, Toby. I think I would just reflect, we were talking before we opened up to everyone here, and this is such a strange time, and one thing that I'm grappling with is it's so jam-packed and yet so empty at the same time. And so for me, when I looked at my schedule for the week and every minute felt like it was taken with something, this was like this glowing little orb right in the middle of it all. So I'm just really grateful to be with you all today and to have that sense of community in a time when we're a little bit fragmented in lots of different ways.
Thank you, Katherine. And just in terms of format, this will primarily be a conversation between Katherine and me. I do encourage you to put questions or thoughts and comments, reflections in the chat. We'll keep a running chat space. If the chat becomes distracting to you, you can close your chat window. And we're going to try to save some time at the end for addressing your questions, having some dialogue with the group as a whole, while saving the very end to give you all the information you need about how to order this book, how to order Katherine's other book, how to get involved in the work that she's doing, and the Sunday Best email blog. If you haven't been receiving that, you should. It's a little ray of sunshine every Sunday morning. So without further ado, shall we begin our conversation, Katherine?
Let's do it.
Awesome, great. Well, first, I'd love for you to just share with this community a little bit about you. You're this amazing storyteller. As I mentioned earlier, you are a financial person. You're the head of sustainable investing at Putnam. That's a very different part of your life. You're an activist. You're a beekeeper. You're a biomimicry specialist. And I think either a current or past board member at Biomimicry 3.8. You're on the board of Santa Fe Institute. You went to Harvard Divinity School. You are a very multifaceted human. So what's the connective tissue here? And how did that lead to this really lovely book?
Well, I really appreciate your connection of all those pieces. Like many of us, I do feel sometimes that, you know, the phrase, like, I wear a lot of different hats. I don't want to wear a lot of different hats. I want to wear one awesome hat, you know. And yet all of the different elements you just mentioned sometimes feel like they sit in different silos, you know, different settings, different times during the week, different functions. And so everything you described is a really important part of this bigger, I don't know, tapestry of life. I think we all have elements of that same weaving together. So in some ways, I describe my work this last 20 plus years now as just a giant effort to reconnect all those threads that we've been taught to teach as being separate. And you know, my biomimicry studies were a huge foundational piece of that reconnection process. And the book fits into that broader arc as well. Toby and I were talking the other day, and I had to admit that this was a little bit of a tender feeling book to share, even though most of the content was already sort of out in the public domain. It was especially feeling tender to share it with my work colleagues, which was a really interesting thing to observe. And so actually my boss mentioned it at a big, huge, like, morning virtual meeting. And I was like, oh, I'm not so sure. I'm glad you mentioned that. And in the end I was, but it was just a sign to me that, wow, that reconnection, it's a hard process, and it's sort of ongoing for all of us. And so I'm taking this book, I mean, on the one hand, it's sort of an offering, and I really wanted to offer it kind of as a gift, and with that spirit of gift, but it's also a practice, right? It's part of this bigger reconnection that I'm trying to work through in my own life. So a lot of different elements.
Beautiful, thank you. And you mentioned that as this book weaves together all this varied aspects of your life, you mentioned that your biomimicry training was a huge part of this work and of who you are, and has continued to be. Can you talk a little bit about how nature and nature's wisdom and biomimicry has really infused your investment work, your spiritual work, your activism work?
Yeah, for sure. So the closest thing I've ever had to an epiphanal moment happened with Janine Benyus in the backyard of Hazel Henderson down in Florida. Many of you know Janine, so you won't be surprised at my epiphany connected to being introduced to her. But we were in the backyard and looking at some crazy moss dripping off a tree, and she was reviewing some of the pretty familiar tenets of biomimicry, and she paused in the middle and said, so, you know, this is how the whole world functions. And I just thought, oh, this is how the whole world is trying to move in this direction. The whole world is set up to function in the way that we're describing at this moment. And I just felt this huge weight lifted from me, because I had spent at that point, more than 10 years working on sustainable investing. And most of that time, it felt like this very uphill, fight the man kind of battle. And there's some nobility to that intention, but it's exhausting and it's not that effective. And so that moment with Janine was the beginning of this bigger arc of learning and understanding and exploring that, in summary, I think would be, it flipped me from the question, what are you fighting, to the question, what are you for? And even when you say it, like, you can just feel like you start to smile thinking of what you're for, right? You start to thinking of what you love. You start thinking of the power of what's possible. And that's such a different starting point than, what are you mad about? What do you want to shift? What do you want to fight? And so even when the substance is the same, that reframing was just so powerful. And so it has informed all of my investment work now, and we can talk more about that if it's helpful. But even better than that, it's just informed my life in a way that it's just more centered on sort of wonder and joy and science, as opposed to that constant sense of battle.
You said something when we were talking earlier about your intention with this offering of helping people stay in the curious space just a little bit longer, like the rather than either or. Can you talk a little bit about that with this group?
Yeah, another big part of this kind of reconnection process is shifting from this zero-sum kind of mindset that a lot of us have been trained in different professional disciplines or academic disciplines. Most of the math of finance, for example, is based on a zero-sum solution set. So for me to win, you have to lose. Like that's how all the calculations in finance work. And yet you look at the world and how it functions, and we live in a generative and regenerative world. It's much harder math to put a formula to something like generation and regeneration. So it's not without its intellectual challenges, don't get me wrong, but when you shift into that space of thinking about the world as generative and regenerative, and again, this cuts across my professional and my personal life, you shift from this either or mindset to and when you do that, one of the biggest ripple effects is it allows you to stay curious for longer. And so, this year has been an amazing and challenging set of examples on this front, but when I see something and my first reaction is, that's horrible, or that's stupid, or, I can't believe this person said this thing or did this thing, I've been trying to train myself to say, like, under what conditions might that make sense? What just happened? What is going on that this thing that seems nonsensical to me seems sensible to other people? Like, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? What am I seeing that they're not seeing? And how might we have that conversation instead of, gosh, you're stupid, let me tell you how stupid you are. And so, again, there are versions of that across all kinds of different settings. But with the book, what I try to do is reflect that through the lens of these Sunday reflections I do. And so that's the spirit that I bring to this writing every Sunday. And so it percolates through the book. And as you will have seen if you glance through it, pretty often the easiest on-ramp to that space of wonder is to go back to the natural world. You can't help but be in that space of curiosity and wonder if you really just still yourself and pay attention to the natural world. And from there, again, everything else kind of opens up instead of closing down.
Maybe you can say a little bit more about your Sunday mornings. I'm an avid reader with so many things coming into my inbox every day. That's one that I don't pass over. And it's this beautiful weave. I'm wondering, folks, give us a nod if you get the Sunday best from Honeybee Capital, from Katherine Collins. Give us a nod there so we can see, or if you're interested in that. maybe you can tell us just a little bit about those Sunday morning offerings and how that led this book into being. Oh, and by the way, folks, before you speak, Katherine, when you're talking about awe and wonder and delight, I'm noticing that I'm so happy to see your whole face on my screen. So if you haven't moved to speaker view, I encourage you to switch from gallery view to speaker view, or at least go back and forth so you can see this beautiful face of Katherine as big as it possibly can be, just radiating the joy and wonder. Please go on. So the question was about your Sunday morning. Please.
Absolutely. Well, when we were chatting the other day, Toby asked, do you actually write these on Sunday, which seems foolish, but I do. When I first started, I used to write them, I don't know, Thursday night, Saturday morning, whatever. But the last few years, I've been increasingly focused on writing in the moment, early Sunday morning. I usually get up, dawn or before dawn if it's winter. And I really try to have that quiet, real time, what is with me from the week, and what can I take from that is worthy of sharing. And so it really is Sunday morning reflections, which puts a time pressure on it, but sometimes that's a good discipline as well. We all know boundary conditions are where creativity comes in. So that is in fact my Sunday morning practice now, and it's as I've taken on some different professional responsibilities the last few years, it's become even more precious to me to have that one window every week that's very consistent and quiet and reflective. So that's the process on Sundays.
And I think foolish is not the right word. I think it's more, if I were to use a word for that, it's more courageous.
Courageous, yes.
Emergent. I think when we spoke, I've been thinking a lot these days about how do we, with so much changing and so much in transition and so much new that we need to welcome into our world that we don't even quite know what it is yet, how do we be our very best and offer our very best while staying as present in the moment as possible? And when you described your Sunday morning practice, it just felt like that's how nature works. It's emergent in response to what's going on right then. And that you have taken that on as a practice, knowing that there are thousands of people out there opening their emails on a Sunday morning so that they can read what you've written. That's the courage part.
Thank you.
So Katherine, this work is it's a work of art. It's organized around the seasons. In fact, I thought maybe I would share just a little bit of the book, and then we'll talk about the book itself in more detail. Does that make sense to you? Are you okay with that? So I opened up to autumn. I think this is autumn, and I'm going to read a part that is called On Rooting. And if people don't yet have the book, you'll see that it's full of these beautiful hand-done illustrations and beautiful little pieces of writing, and all organized by the seasons and collected by the seasons. So I'm going to read On Rooting, if you don't mind me reading your words with great humility and respect. This is Katherine's voice. I've been trying to follow a more seasonal model of work, using the winter for deep foundation building projects, spring for sprouting up new ideas, summer for stretching out and expanding. Fall is full-on harvest mode, gathering up all that has been tended, sharing it with others, pushing to get a lot done before the quieter winter stretch is upon us. Yet autumn is a time of planting too. It's not for tender seeds that will burst into action, but for bigger beginnings, the sapling that needs to settle its roots before the ground freezes, the bulbs that need the dark and the cold to properly develop. Friends, what durable roots do we want to set in the ground? Let's be planting even as we harvest. Let's dig in today. So that's a sampling. And if you'd like to reflect on that, you're certainly welcome to, or as a launching pad for talking about the book.
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One, it's great to hear someone else read your words. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. So, so thank you. It's sort of a whole different view on things. And two things come to mind. One is the seasonal nature of the book, which was not originally planned. I just worked with my team and we lined up everything we wanted to include, and it's probably not too surprising given what we've already discussed, that there was a very strong current of the natural seasons that sort of organically wove its way through the material we were looking at. So it seemed only right to organize the book that way. And when we did that, some different perspectives and patterns emerged than I had even been conscious of in writing. And so Autumn's a great example. A lot of the writing I had done over the years in Autumn was talking about this sort of golden hour, within the year where, there's harvest and it's at the same time tilting towards the dark and the quiet. And that's just a really helpful thing, I think, to be conscious of. My team at work, for example, now we're trying to take a more seasonal pattern to planning our own work, so that there are certain things that kind of emerge in the springtime, like very quick out of the gates. There are other things that take some doing and they're harvested in the fall. And then there are some things we sort of plan for and deepen our work on as we tilt into the winter. And so there are a lot of neat currents there, again, that sort of crisscross between the world that we live in and the world that we live in, right?
Especially right now, right? Like, we are definitely in a time of harvesting a lot of energy and work that people have put into the election process and our political process. We're harvesting. We're still waiting for some leaves to fall before this season is fully ready to be planting, right? The metaphors are there, but that reframe in the, or expansion of view in that little piece about harvesting and planting and holding both of those at the same time. It's really very wise. Yeah. I want to say a little bit more about this, the way this book is designed in nature's image, because I think a lot of people on this call will really appreciate that. It is a work of art. If you haven't seen the book yet, I don't know if my Zoom screen will do justice on some of these photographs or some of these drawings. Here's the opening into the section about autumn. I'm just going to randomly move.
Yeah, I'll note while you're flipping, Toby, that the tree that's the opener for each of the seasons is a real tree. So that's my tree out in Western Massachusetts. It's about a 200-ish year old giant maple, like New England postcard kind of maple. And I was going to say this might sound sappy, but that's a bad pun. This past year, whenever I've, like many of us, have just been at a loss so often this year, one practice I've developed is I find the oldest tree I can find around me wherever I am, and I just go and sit there and kind of lean up against it for a little while. And it never fails to help. I just think back and I try to kind of zoom out, as I learned in biomimicry practice, think of everything this tree has seen. And so much of it is so much more dramatic than what I'm dealing with at this moment. And tree's still here, it's a long arc to the world we live in. And so it's been a big, wonderful practice, the tree finding practice. It's never failed me yet.
I know some of the folks on this call are from the Bay Area or Northern California, where those redwoods have been around for 5,000-6,000 years. They've seen a lot, right? What's going on this week in US politics is tiny.
Yeah.
So there's some other ways that I noticed with delight that this book is in nature's image. There's no page numbers.
You're right. We put them in and then we took them out. They were just so ugly. It was really distracting. We were so sure we were going to include them, and then we put them in and we all just looked at it and thought, ugh. No.
No, let's do seasons instead, and artwork and drawings. And I also, as I was really diving into it, I noticed that you had an index, and I thought, well, what would Katherine put in the index? And I looked in the index, and the index lists the title of each of these, like 1 to 2 page essays. Essay isn't even the right word. 1 to 2 page heart offerings. And then it says who it's for the greeters, for the helpless, for the navigators, for the survivors. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the index actually started as a long list of actual people that I wanted to dedicate each entry to. And there were 2 challenges with that. One is I live in fear of others' judgment. And so I was sure someone was going to be offended or left out. And that felt a little tiptoey to publish to the world. And also, this had moved beyond just being a personal project for me and was going to be something, kind of out, hopefully in service of others. And so I took a whole day and I sat back and I tried to identify, why is it that I'm thinking of this person with this idea? Like, what is it about this person that is linking the 2 in my mind? And so the index that's there now is that sort of, it's biomimicry practice again. It's like that abstracted design principle version of the initial very, very personal version. And I love how it turned out. When I'm sending the book to friends and colleagues, I always mark the entry that is intended for them. I don't always tell them that's what I'm doing, but that's always where I put a note or a bookmark to them, and just to see what might come of it.
Beautiful. So this book, I always get the right and left brain confused. This is your left brain.
I do the same. Yeah, you're right.
No, you're right. Drawing on the right side of the brain. This is your right brain book, and this is your left brain book. And maybe I need to hold them like this. I'm not quite sure. The Nature of Investing. When we talked the other day, you said they're the same book. So tell us a little bit more about that, this little art piece and this treatise to the investment world about how they can think differently.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that kind of flew out of my mouth. And so I have been thinking of it ever since. They are the same book. Why? How do I explain that? And I think this is, to me, the sign that biomimicry and linking to the deeper patterns and wisdom in the natural world is so fruitful for me, is that I could use the ideas across every possible dimension of my life and they still rang true. I could use them in a really deep way, going kind of narrower and narrower on a specific topic, and it was really helpful. I could use them in a big kind of pattern recognition way. I could use them at work. I could use them in my spiritual life. To me, that's the test of an idea that is like a root, no pun intended, but like a root idea, not something that's like a clever tool up on top, but it's like really close to the essence of things. And since that is at the heart of both of the books, I think that's why, to me, they're 2 branches on the same tree. They're both taking the premise that a kind of holistic, connected way of seeing the world can illuminate things that we can't see with our more narrow tools. And not that you want to avoid the narrow tools, but you want to complement them with this additional wisdom. And so the Nature of Investing does that in a practical kind of applied setting that is important to me. And this book, Month of Sundays, does it in a much more personal kind of spiritual way. But to me, they are 2 sides of the same coin, or 2 leaves on the same tree.
Mm-hmm. And maybe the fact that your boss at Putnam wanted to let the world know about this book and offer this book to people in the investment community is a reflection that you're part of reminding people of the trunk.
It's a really good point. You know, one thing that happened after my boss mentioned it is our team at Putnam decided to give the book to a bunch of clients and business partners as part of this fall gathering we were having. And again, like my own, I don't know, inner critic kind of piped up and said, you know, have you read the book? Like, I'm not sure you want this to be our corporate gift. And sure enough, the folks who were making that decision had read it, and their response to me was, hey, the whole point of how Putnam invests is, you know, we're active investors, which means they're actual humans making the investment decisions and not robots. And for those of you who are in the finance field, you will know that that's not a cool thing to do these days. It's way cooler to have an algorithm run everything, and it's certainly efficient, at least in a narrowly defined way. And so the folks who were leading our conference said, this is the whole message we're trying to get across, the idea that if you have this more complete, more human way of informing your decisions and caring for your clients and your partners, like that really matters. And so they saw this book as totally aligned with the message we were trying to get across about the value of active management. And shoot, I'm in that field and I hadn't made that connection. So it was just such a good reminder to me that I've been shown time and time again these past years, people are ready for so much more than we think, you know, and I've been just tiptoey in so many dimensions where it turns out I don't have to be tiptoey. Everyone's waiting to rush ahead as soon as the door is open, right? So instead of going 1 inch at a time, you know, maybe a little door flinging would be a good thing.
Yeah, we're yearning for wholeness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where we can find wholeness and where we can find voices that bring forward the voice of wholeness and nature and life itself. It's like water in a thirsty, drought-stricken field.
Yeah.
So thank you for being that voice among other beautiful flowers who are doing that work. Yeah. I'm seeing some good questions come in, and I think we will have time for some questions. So if you have questions, jot them in the chat or jot them down in your journal, and we'll have a time for some dialogue. I want to dive into one more piece of this and then maybe do another little bit of reading. But we talked about how this is organized by the seasons. And there are 4 seasons that we are in cycles of as humans, as earthlings. And then there's another section of the book that's called the final chapter. And I love how it actually has a different color when you look at the book this way, another little art miracle, bit of magic in this book. And that final chapter is called liminality, that in-between space. That chapter was germinated on the Ides of March of this year, right in the midst of the COVID rise. And you wrote it between mid-March and June of 2020, in this year, in this remarkable, difficult, unpredictable year. It was the COVID crisis time. It was the economic crash that went along with that, which surely had a lot of influence on your life and the life of many people you're close to. It was the time of race reckoning at a very expanded and awakened way in our country. Climate impacts starting to brew, which really blew up later in the summer, but was starting then too. A lot was going on during that period. And when I read this book, this chapter of the book, what I noted was, as you go from the left side of the page to the right side of the page, it sort of alternates between almost a journal, your Sunday morning journals of that time, and then the seeds of a prayer. Mm-hmm. And when you come to the close of that, the reader is gifted with the entire prayer, which is a poem, prayer, beautiful call to the universe. Tell us about writing that, and tell us about what you think about it now.
Yeah, so there's the process side of that, and then there's the experience side of that. I mentioned before when we lined up all the entries, they fell very naturally into this seasonal pattern. And then we were compiling the book in the middle of the crisis this spring. And there were a few key decision points. I felt like we couldn't skip it. You know, this most vivid and painful time. And it really has been, even now as it's extended, I feel like time out of time, you know, it's neither here nor there, which doesn't mean it's nothing. It means it's a really important place. And so this liminality as a title, to me, is the only word that made sense. It's one of my favorite concepts from divinity school, and it usually is used to refer to the transition between two big life states, like, you know, birth into the world, or, you know, death out of the physical world, between phases of enlightenment by some measures, but you can't stay there, right? So it's this place of infinite possibility, and it's inherently temporal, like temporary in nature. And so to me, that really defined this period. And you're right, Toby, it very much has been more of sort of a directly personal reflection on events as they've been unfolding this year than some other parts of the book are. And I'm glad that the prayer emerged as, I don't know, a counterweight or a complement, because reading back now, they're painful entries. More than I realized at the time, which is often true for traumatic times. You know, you don't know you're in it till you're a little bit distant from it. But they very naturally came together. You know, what happens when we are in crisis? Like, we call upon something, right? Something beyond ourselves. And so I'm glad that came through in the book. And I have to admit, it wasn't 100% conscious intent that's how it turned out. But I'm glad it did. And I'm glad we didn't skip it. You know, one other great element of being involved in the biomimicry community is it's opened up so many other doors. And Toby, you and Dana Baumeister are the ones who connected me with Joanna Macy originally. And my work with Joanna highlighted that I am the type of person that wants to skip past the dark parts. Like, I am okay with being in them, but I am not going to reflect on them. I am not going to think about them. Like, let's move on, glass half full, keep moving forward. And Joanna really encouraged / forced me to stay in the dark a little longer than was comfortable. And so I've called upon that experience so often this year. I feel like for all of us, this year has been a giant exercise in, you know, can you stay there? And if you stay there, what might you learn? Like, what might be possible or illuminated that otherwise would not be? And so that's the spirit that goes into that final section.
Beautiful, thank you. May I read a piece of the liminality chapter?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
You know, many of you know that in addition to doing Zooms with authors who I love, I spend a lot of time facilitating groups and doing leadership development, and I've been doing a lot of webinars this spring. And during that time, I was talking a lot with folks about transition, mm-hmm. and about exactly what you just said, that teaching about, can we stay in that uncertain in-between place long enough for the creative juices to do what they need to do there. And I drew from, as I was trying to figure something out, plan an event that I didn't know what, you know, we were all, nobody knew. Your Sunday best came right into my lap, and I used it as the basis for that work with a group that really relished it too. So I'm going to read, this is from, doesn't have a page number, it's from April 2020 in the liminality chapter. Your words. One of my favorite words from divinity school is liminality. Although I just noticed that what this says, Katherine, is one of my favorite worlds from divinity school.
Oh, hey, that's the typo that we couldn't find, but I kind of dig it. So I
do too. One of my favorite worlds from divinity school is liminality. It's a word for the betwixt and between, the neither here nor there. The gap between life and death is liminal space. The pause before the chorus of good vibrations is a liminal space. There are just 3 rules for liminal space as far as I can tell. First, we're not allowed to stay. Liminal spaces are not permanent. Second, we can't go backwards, only through. Third, in the liminality, amazing things are possible. Dear ones, we are in strange times, betwixt and between. This is still true months later, right?
Yeah.
I'm drinking the same coffee, but the beans were handed to me in a silent parking lot by a shop worker in gloves and mask. I'm doing the same daily work, but my colleagues are all pixels instead of people. Here's the good news, according to the rules above. We will exit this liminal state eventually. We will go through, not back. And right now, in the liminality, we are in a space of immense potential. What do we choose? In impossible times, impossible things are possible. Yeah. I'm going to read one more piece. It's your piece about Thanksgiving. Because I'm so grateful to you, Katherine, and I'm so grateful to this community that comes together for this wisdom, and many who come together over and over for this wisdom. Thank you. I want to read this piece out loud. May I?
Please.
This is called On Thanksgiving, which is coming soon. One of my favorite meditations, says Catherine Collins, is to sketch a spiral of thankfulness. Pick an object near you, like a coffee cup. First, give thanks for the object itself, how it provides utility and improves your day. Now take one spiral out. Think of how that object came to be before you right now. The person who bought it, the store that sold it, the driver who carried it, the potter who crafted it. Now spiral a bit further to the clay that was dug, the minerals for the glazing. Just a few layers of exploration, and we are already realizing the cup is not an it. It's part of the living earth. And if we're thankful for the earth, we're thankful for the stars, for the galactic explosions that formed our planet. That boring coffee cup, brought to me through a giant web of human cooperation, is a pile of stardust. With just 1 or 2 spirals, it's easy to be overwhelmed by good fortune, by the beauty and power and connection of the universe. It's no coincidence that we have a holiday for thankfulness as the days are getting darker. The gratitude, along with the harvest, can fill us up for the long winter ahead. In the dark and in the cold, we are surrounded by stars. Beautiful, thank you. I see hands clapping. I want to ask you actually one more question, and then I open up for the conversation with the group. And that question is about this moment. Books take a while to gestate and bring out into the world. You said that you were just finishing the book in March, right? And yet it's coming out now. It's here now. So you couldn't have known what this year would bring, what this world would be going through. And yet it feels so timely. So what can you share with us about how you feel this book is relevant for 2020?
Well, you're right in your observation, particularly for the liminality section. My fondest hope was that by the time folks were reading the book, this would already be behind us, and it would be like, yeah, remember that? That was a tough spring. And it hasn't turned out that way, which, you know, is maybe the lesson we're all still working through. Maybe that's always the case, right? You know, the lesson is coming back and back and back, sometimes in more vivid ways and sometimes a little more under the surface. So I really am hopeful that this book will be received in the way that we're offering it. Very much is in that spirit of offering. And we tried to match the content and the questions of the book with the form as much as we could. So one thing we haven't mentioned that we should is all the proceeds from the book are recycling back into some amazing nonprofit organizations that, again, sit at this root layer of building wherewithal and capacity in the world. And so to me, it fits very well with the Thanksgiving meditation you just read, Toby, which is just this spiral kind of out and out and out. And for me, one of the ongoing questions is, what can I do to contribute to that kind of positive spiral? And that can take a lot of different forms over time. I feel like it's always emerging. And that might be the image that I most take from this whole exercise.
Nice. I think another way of asking my question is, what gives you hope now? And how is this book a thread for that?
Well, there are a couple entries in the book that speak to this. One of my most profound lessons the past decade or so has been the distinction between optimism and hope, which is partly from Peter Gomes, pastor at Harvard for a long time, and partly from Václav Havel, the resistance leader. And Havel made this distinction that hope is not the assumption that everything's going to turn out for the best. It's a much deeper, tougher thing. It is the conviction that something is right, regardless of how it turns out in the short term. And so when you ask what makes you hopeful, I have no problem being hopeful. There are a lot of days, though, I am not super optimistic. And so to keep those two, you know, both vivid in my life has been a big help.
Thank you. Thank you, Katherine. We have about 10 minutes left. And so I'm going to ask if you have a question and you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question to Katherine, maybe put your hand up. And the way to do that is you click on where it says participants on the bottom of your screen, and you'll see off to the right everybody who's on the call, 40 folks. And you can, there's a place, let's see, I think I'm host, so I don't have the same screen, but someplace it says raise your hand. So you can raise your hand and we'll see that you have a question. And maybe while that's happening, Jen, if I could ask you to put the links for how to order this book, the landing page for Honeybee Month of Sundays-book.com. And you'll see there that the first link goes to IndieBound, which is a way that you can order from your own local bookseller this book, but in an easy to access way. So Katherine purposely put that as the first link, and we talked about it the other day, so I want to encourage you to do that too, IndieBound. And I think there's also a link to Katherine's work at Putnam, which is the same ethos informs the investment work. And when she's not online to beautiful biomimicry people talking about this awesome book or writing awesome books, she's managing big mutual fund products. And anybody can buy them through your own investment people. So that's a way that you can have this wisdom inform your own life too. So questions, who's got a question for Katherine? I saw that there were some in the chat as well. Excuse me for looking away, but I'm trying to find some of these things. I did see a question for Katherine from Nadia. Where did you study biomimicry? Was it through Biomimicry 3.8 or other institutions or forums? How did you create your own biomimicry journal?
Yeah, I studied biomimicry a few years back now, which was before some of the more recent formal academic programs were established. So at the time, my choice was either the B specialist program, which was a 1-year, intensive program, or the B Pro, which was a longer program. So I did the B specialist program, about a year-long. Terrific. It was way more than I bargained for, which was good news, but logistically challenging. So we had in-person gatherings out in the Redwoods in California 4 or 5 times that year with our cohort of students, some of whom have remained amazing close friends, and a few of whom are here, so thank you. And then a lot of at-home, online study in between those gatherings. So that was my route, and then continued practice since then.
And the biomimicry specialist program has now morphed into part of the offering, if anybody is interested in learning more in a deep way, through Arizona State University. Now there's a master's degree program. It's all online. And then you can still do week-long immersion workshops, one of which is a biomimicry for social innovation workshop that Dana Baumeister and I teach. And
which I should also have mentioned.
Which you did. You were in the first one. That was amazing. So yeah, when things open up again, the next one we're planning is on Orcas Island in the Pacific Northwest.
Whoa,
so,
great.
Yeah. Other questions, you can raise your hand in the gallery view of Zoom, or you can raise your hand in the participants tag. I know there's questions out there for Katherine. Or maybe you just want to comment or express your gratitude. This is the dialogue part. And we see your faces, so come on out and say something. Ani.
Yeah. Would you say more about your first book and where that is inside of you? It's obvious that the latest book is totally from your heart and into all that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ani. And Deborah, thank you for the visual. Awesome. Yeah, that is exactly the right summary. I think The Nature of Investing, which is the book I wrote basically while I was in that BSpec program. So it was very intensive research and writing period, was my brainy kind of processing of biomimicry. And you're exactly right. This book is a little bit more my heartfelt processing of the same topics, which again is why, to me, they're the same. What I loved about The Nature of Investing and that brain-centered view is it did give me the chance to intellectually really interrogate some of the principles of biomimicry and their utility. And again, for my professional world, this is a really important part of process. Like, can you really poke at something and ask the hardest questions you can think and it still stands up? And it did, which in some ways for me needed to come first. Before I wanted to trust my heart to it, I needed my head to be sure, which is maybe a reflection on me more than anything else. But once my head was committed, I felt like I could risk it, with the rest of me.
So the book came from the biomimicry course that you took that was a product of it? I mean, it stimulated you to write the book. Well, what was the name of the course?
So it was the Biomimicry Specialist Program, which has since evolved. But that was the year-long kind of immersion program I had. And the book was not like a direct assignment, but it was my way of kind of processing all I was learning and translating it into my professional setting. And as Toby mentioned at the beginning, what was really interesting about that and hard to work through is I didn't want to translate on sort of a poetic and metaphorical level. Like, I wanted to keep the scientific integrity of biomimicry intact and yet still apply it to this socially created, investment setting, which is really different than saying, I want to create a fin that's a better fin, you know, let me look at a fish. Not that that's a trivial thing, but it's much less directly linear in terms of the application. And so that's what was hard about it, but also what I found so fantastic in terms of kind of puzzle solving. And it really did illuminate for me and give me a much more precise way to define some of the amazing potential that I see in the investment world, but also some of the limitations of the tools we've created, you know, the last 20 or 30 years that are fine, but very narrow in their function. So many benefits to writing that book.
Thank you. I guess I just have to buy both books.
Yes, you do. They're both great. I think we have time for one more question, and I'm going to call on you, Sarah.
Oh, thanks, Toby. Toby, thanks for doing these. And Katherine, it's great to see you.
You too.
I bought a bunch of Sundays. I'm in the grad program at ASU right now, and I'm not reading anything that's not assigned, right? But I bought a bunch of Sundays, so I thought this is something I can pick up and thumb through, read a couple, put it down, pick it back up. And I picked it up and I read it all the way through. I couldn't put it down. So thank you for writing it. Thank you for pulling it all together. My question is, you know, we're in the US, the elections are over, and the, you know, pandemic is rising and racial, you know, inequality is, you know, stay here. And my question for you today is, what are the bees teaching you today? What is a lesson from the bees about this moment today?
Oh, Sarah, that's such a profound question and a really vital one. You know, sometimes I describe my divinity school studies as a master's degree in fear, which they don't like at all at HDS. But really, the reason I say that is I finished my whole course of study and I was going back through my notes and trying to just process it all as a whole instead of each course. And I realized every single course I took had this, whether stated or unstated, through line, talking about fear, uncertainty, trauma of different sorts, change of all sorts. And it makes sense, right? What are our spiritual worlds designed to do but to help us navigate through uncertain times? So in retrospect, that's kind of an obvious through current. And the reason I mention that is that one of the big elements that was revealed to me when writing The Nature of Investing is, animals and other organisms have something that looks like fear, but not like we do. Like, we make stuff up all the time that doesn't really have a function. And so, you know, if you startle a squirrel and it's scared because you're going to step on it. Like, it's a very direct, vivid, like physical, logical kind of feedback loop. But the squirrel isn't scared that I'm going to think its butt's fat, or, you know, that it's not running fast enough, or that the other squirrel is better than it. Like, I mean, we just invent so much that is needless and functionless. And so one thing I love about beekeeping goes hand in hand with that. You know, it's a lesson over and over again. Maybe I should be afraid of getting stung or of harming my hives as I tend to them, but that's it. You know, it's just a very centering, vivid, direct interaction, and they're not scared of me. You know, if I look like I'm threatening the honey, they get a little annoyed, but that's it. You know, again, they're not making up stories about me just cause. And so for me, beekeeping goes hand in hand with this greater arc of practice of connecting with nature, because the more time I spend in nature, the more clearly I can see what's true, like at the root of human experience, and what we've just piled on top of that truth that can be let go somehow, some way. I mean, I don't necessarily know how or when, but it's helped me to be more empathetic also. You know, when I see someone now who's very angry, my first question in my own head is, oh, what are you scared of? Like, why are you yelling when there's no need to yell? You know, if you're trying to save a baby in the street, fine. But like a lot of our yelling, that's the question to ask. You know, like what is the fear at the root of this? And if I can identify that, then sometimes I can help, you know, to cast a different light on it or put it in its proper place. Not always, but it makes me less angry to approach it that way, which is a plus.
Katherine, I hear you taking your gratitude spiral prayer and working it the other way. What are you yelling about? What's underneath that? What's really the fear at the heart?
Yeah.
And can we take that in these times where we're making up all kinds of stories about what to be afraid of? Can we stay present with the buzzing of the bees all around us and be true with what's happening right now? Yeah. We are at the top of the hour, and I can stay on a little longer. I don't know if Katherine can, but I want to just, before we lose folks, I just really want to express such deep gratitude to you, Katherine, for your work, for clearing an hour in the middle of a busy day, in a busy life, in a busy city. You're in the process of moving, you're doing all your work, and yet you were able to come and be here with this community. So thank you. For these awesome books you wrote, I'm going to wave them around again. These are for, you know, we're doing things differently this year, but if you're thinking about giving gifts as this year comes to a close, as we move into time when people nestle in and read over the winter, please support our beloved Katherine with and the work that she's supporting. As she mentioned, the proceeds of this book goes to charities that are at the heart of the regenerative work that she's committed to and that we're trying to do in the world. I asked Jennifer to, she just put the links up again, so they're close and accessible in the chat space. Thank you to all of you for clearing an hour in the middle of your day and being part of this and cross-pollinating the wisdom and the heart and the love. And I just want to give a little preview. Our next Voices of Nature author series, which I affectionately call the Biomimicry Book Club, is a couple weeks from now. I think it is, let me get the date right, put it in your calendars. December 2nd, that's a Wednesday, with Katherine Wilkinson on behalf of the book she wrote, along with Ayanna Johnson. All we can say, this is a collection of women writers about climate and about the climate crisis and about what we need to do. So that's just a little plug for our next time. Want to support them as well. And I just love that we're doing this crowdsourcing where people are helping each other and we're really lifting up the voices of women leading change through translating and being interpreters for the natural world. Katherine,
Toby, I want to thank you. I feel like you offered a lot of things, and I know everyone on this call is just so grateful to you. You are a convener and a teacher and beacon of light for us all. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Katherine, what's your day like? Do you need to switch to the next thing, or?
I have a few minutes. If folks have any last questions or want me to stay on, I can do that for just a bit.
Okay. Well, let's say goodbye to those who need to jump. Again, thank you. And please take this love and this wisdom and spread it. Spread it out like have the spiral go outward and touch those who you are going to be touching. May it all take root in good ways. And we'll stay for another, let's say another 5 or 6 minutes. Any other questions? And I'm actually going to ask you to unmute yourselves so we can have a conversation. If anybody has questions or thoughts you want to share with Katherine, let's do that. Seeing lots of thanks and gratitude in the chat. I see your hand up, Ani. Let me see if there's any others who have not yet raised their hand. Michelle, you had a question.
Hi, thank you so much. One of the many concepts I spend time thinking about, especially this year, is that area of the edge that you write about. Other teachers I've had the blessing to be inspired by talk about the overlap and the place of most conflict and energy for change. And I wondered, have you uncovered any new insights that are applicable right now? Is because I feel like we're in a big edge right now, big overlap as we approach January.
Yeah, it's such a vital question, Michelle. A few things, some of which are reflected in the passages you're mentioning. One great lesson from studying natural systems is the edges are the coolest. You know, the edges are where all the neat, weird stuff happens, you know, where you've got like systems rubbing up against each other. You've got emergence of all kinds of neat adaptations and all this creativity. And so I've taken a lot from that really simple observation. It's made me, again, to this question of fear, when I see something that is at the edge, any kind of edge, I'm trying to create the practice of being like, ooh, what's going on there? You know, like, what can I learn? What can I see? What's unexpected? What's different than what I see way over here where you know, I might spend most of my time. And again, it's that sense of curiosity, like sincere curiosity, like what's happening, that kind of opens things up. I will say though, as you noted, that's totally intertwined with somehow getting past the fear. You know, we've been trained long and deep to fear edges of all sorts. You know, like you're safest in the middle. You're safest surrounded by things that are just like you. And, you know, you might be safe in one dimension, but you're completely exposed in every other dimension. You know, you're never gonna develop. And so, so I'm trying in a small way to kind of convey those elements to our team, for example, in terms of just day-to-day practice. I'm trying, I'll give you a specific example. So a lot of folks approach sustainable investing with this long list of, you know, we don't like this, and we don't like this, and we don't like this, and this is wrong, and this is immoral, and this is damaging. And it's mostly pretty accurate, but gosh, even I don't like to listen to that for too long. And so we've tried to flip it around and say, look, here's something that's changing, that's really interesting. What might that mean? You know, what new opportunities are arising? What could we do that might be more valuable than what we used to do? And how can we think about that realm of potential? And again, I'm not skipping over the negative in saying that, but I'm trying to reorient our whole team towards this idea of, oh, when you hear something that is threatening to what you think you know or are comfortable with or have benefited from in the past, instead of your first response being no, if your first response can be, interesting, so much is possible. So it's a very open-ended answer, but when I think of edges, that's the lesson I've taken from studying like ecotones and what I'm trying to bring into practice.
Nice. Let's have one more question. Nadia, I saw that you had indicated you wanted to speak.
I just get so excited that I'm like constantly. So I'm sorry about raising my hand 1,000 times. Thank you, Toby, for doing this. And Katherine, I'm so excited. I've been in the banking and finance industry for 20 years now. And I happened to come across biomimicry as an interest of mine. I would never imagine to bring together a bio-inspired, nature-based, completely, you know, nature-focused concept to a completely man-made, fabricated baloney system called finance. When I saw that you brought those two together, I was like, that's brilliant, and I've got to understand how that's even possible. And so my question to you would be, how did you, my original question, Toby, thank you for asking it for me, was where did you learn biomimicry? Where did you get the basics and the foundation of knowledge? But how did actually biomimicry spark your interest? Why would you even think to follow and then therefore incorporate that as an overall mindset in your life? This isn't just Putnam, Katherine. This is like embedded now in how you kind of deal with day to day, it sounds like, from what you said. So how did you discover biomimicry? How did you first find it even? How did you learn about it?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So So I had heard a few times about biomimicry. I was spending more and more time in the sustainability realm, not just sustainable investing, but like sustainability regeneration more broadly. Places like Bioneers, you know, where it sort of frees your mind if you're coming from finance. And so I had come across Janine's many talks kind of in the public domain, which were amazing. And then I had the chance to meet Janine through Hazel Henderson, an incredible pioneer in sustainable investing who's based in Florida. And Hazel had this idea that there was a direct link between the two. And as I described, you know, we're in Hazel's backyard and Janine's just kind of offhand saying, well, you know, this is how things work, like, duh. And I was like, ooh. Yeah. Honestly, if it hadn't been for that very personal human sense of, again, not just wonder, but relief, like, oh, this is what has been so hard for me in finance. And what if there's something here that could there. It's not yet visible to most folks, to be fair, but to me, it's obvious. And I had the good fortune to be trained as an investor in a very connected way. Like, you know, you observe the world around you and you think, huh, you know, what company makes that thing that I think is really valuable? How can I maybe think about that in my investing? And so that's a very, at this point, kind of quaint, old-fashioned way to be trained as an investor. But to me, having that as my root for investing made all of this click together. And so now we've got all this, you know, gobbledygook of finance that's been kind of synthesized and put on top of that. But at the heart, investing is still that connected, direct thing. And when that's the case, you can start to apply all these principles, and then all the stuff that's piled on top just naturally aligns itself because it's just piled on top. It's not that hard.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. Friends, we are going to need to close this circle. Again, Katherine, such gratitude. I think I'm excited to sit with my cup in the morning and imagine all the spirals coming out. And it will include you, and it will include everybody in this virtual circle. Thank you to everybody.
Does anyone know how to read 2 books at once?
Jennifer, thank you too for holding space and being in touch with people.
Jennifer.
Really great. Thank you to all of you. Please come back and be part of this again. And buy Katherine's books. Let's see a surge in sales as a result of this.
Toby, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. This was such a joy.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Blessings.
Toby, I'm going to stop recording.
Thank you.